Welcome to our fireside chat. The few moments that we have with you, we would like to take you back to 1941 and 1942 in order to share with you information about Operation Barbarossa and the Battle of Stalingrad.
In the late 1930s, the leaders of Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia signed a non-aggression pact promising one another years of safety. However, the leader of the Nazi Party, Adolf Hitler, began a planned invasion of the Soviet Union in 1940. His invasion was called Operation Barbarossa, named after a 12th century German king, Frederick Barbarossa, who ruled from 1155 to 1190 and was responsible for unifying a once broken Germany. Operation Barbarossa was a well-thought-out attack plan, highlighting a German campaign with the intent of taking control of the Soviet Union. This massive German offensive came as a complete shock to the Soviet Union, as their leader, Joseph Stalin, had lowered his defense thinking that Hitler was not a threat. Stalin even removed some high-ranking officials of his military force due to their constant warning of a German attack, which Stalin chose to ignore. However, on June 22, 1941, the attack was launched, thus breaking the non-aggression pact that had been formally set in place between the Nazis and the Soviets. This was in part due to the Soviet Union taking control of territories close to Romanian oil fields on which the Germans were dependent. This moment helped further heighten Hitler's desire to control the Soviet Union with its communist government and high population of Jewish inhabitants. It stood for everything that Hitler loathed. Hitler and his German Army High Command launched their assault with a massive fighting force, larger than any that the world had ever seen before. According to our sources, and I quote, "For the campaign against the Soviet Union, the Germans allotted almost 150 divisions, containing a total of about 3 million men. Among those units were 19 panzer divisions, and in total the Barbarossa force had about 3,000 tanks, 7,000 artillery pieces, and 2,500 aircraft. It was in effect the largest and most powerful invasion force in human history. The Germans' strength was further increased by more than 30 divisions of Finnish and Romanian troops. The initial force moved swiftly and rapidly through border towns in Russia and destroyed all opposing forces in their path. Russian troops were blindsided by this attack and fled quickly from the horrendous German army and begged for reinforcements. After many successful German battles, the operation began to take a turn for the worst. The Germans believed that they would gain a swift victory in Russia. However, Hitler was horribly misinformed about the total size of the Soviet army and the severity of Russian winters, thus providing him with new challenges and changing the outcome of his assault. Nazi forces were bombarded by Russian troops, forcing a German surrender and changing the course of the operation. In conclusion, this vicious attack, which broke the non-aggression pact between Russia and Germany, showed that Adolf Hitler was a ferocious man who could not be trusted and would stop at nothing to achieve total domination of Europe.
In addition, I'd like to speak about the Eastern Front, more specifically, the Battle of Stalingrad. Hitler's troops were trying to take control of the city of Stalingrad in Russia. While Hitler boasted of the importance of this hostile takeover, their siege was unsuccessful. The Soviets were able to defend Stalingrad at the cost of many lives. The battle lasted roughly 6 months and began when the Germans invaded Stalingrad on July 17th of 1942 and ended on February 2nd of 1943 when the Germans ran out of food and ammunition. There was a combined military and civilian death count of about 2 million people, thus showing how truly deadly this battle was. This win for the Soviets is a turning point in the war on the Eastern Front. The Germans were trying to capture Stalingrad because they saw it as essential to their conquering of the rest of southern Russia. If they had taken this key point, they could have launched further assaults on the rest of southern Russia. It was incredibly important that the Russians defended their vital industrial and transportation center. So how did they do it? How did the Russians defeat the mighty Germans? By mid-November, as the German invaders were running short on ammunition, the Russians launched their counterattack on the unsuspecting German army. The Russians encircled the enemy. The Germans could have fought their way out, but instead Hitler ordered them to hold their ground. Eventually, the freezing and starving Germans in Stalingrad surrendered on February 2nd of 1943. This victory for the Russians is a huge hit to the morale of the Germans and helped empower the Soviets, and will hopefully have a negative snowball effect on the rest of the war. In conclusion, the Russian recapture of Stalingrad was a great humiliation for Hitler, who had boasted the importance of taking the city to the German people. He was now more distrustful than ever with his generals. Stalin had gained confidence in his military, which allowed Stalingrad to be on the offensive for the rest of the war.